They dumped their trash on my land to save money, and by the end of that week, I had their entire multi-million-dollar project on its knees. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten anyone, I didn't even step foot on their site. I just used what they didn't think I'd notice. And the funny part is, it all started with a smell. It was a Sunday morning, slow and quiet like most Sundays out where I live, just outside a small town called Millhaven. Nothing fancy, just open land, a few scattered homes, and more sky than most people are used to seeing. I was sitting on my porch with a chipped ceramic mug, black coffee, still half asleep, just watching the tree line like I always do, kind of letting my brain catch up with the day, and then I caught something else instead. It hit me in a weird way, not strong at first, just enough to make me wrinkle my nose a little. Burnt plastic, something sour underneath it, like food gone bad, and then that sharp chemical edge that doesn't belong anywhere near fresh morning air. At first I thought maybe someone down the road was burning trash again. Happens sometimes, folks get lazy, but this felt closer, too close. So I set the mug down, didn't even finish the coffee, and started walking. I cut past my shed, boots crunching on gravel, then down that dirt path I used to get the tractor out back, and with every step the smell got heavier, thicker, like it was settling into the ground itself, and then I saw them. 3 dump trucks, just sitting there like they owned the place. No rush, no attempt to hide anything, engines off, beds tilted, and behind them, this massive pile of garbage that looked like it had been building for days. I just stood there for a second, not even angry yet, just processing. Broken drywall stacked in jagged layers, old carpet rolled up and tied with frayed rope, black garbage bags already leaking into the dirt, paint cans tipped over with dried streaks running down the sides, roofing shingles, splintered wood, and yeah, even a couple cracked toilets tossed off to the side like it was nothing. Not construction debris you accidentally misplace. This was a full-on dumping operation. And here's the thing, I didn't need to guess who it was. Across the creek, maybe half a mile out, there'd been this big commercial project going up for months. You know the type, grocery store, gym, a couple fast food chains lined up like dominoes, big promises about jobs and growth and all that. Trucks coming in at all hours, crews working weekends, lights on late into the night. They were moving fast, too fast if you ask me. Deadlines were tight, budgets even tighter, and landfill fees around here, not cheap. So somewhere along the line, someone looked at a map, saw my land, saw that one side didn't have fencing yet, and decided, well, that'll do. They didn't see a person, they saw an opportunity. I own 9 acres out there, been in my family for a while, not some abandoned lot, not forgotten, just quiet. Flat land, easy access, and yeah, that one stretch along the edge hadn't been fenced off yet because I hadn't gotten around to it, figured I had time. Turns out, people like that don't wait for you to catch up. Now, a younger version of me might have stormed over there, started shouting, maybe done something stupid, but I've learned a thing or two over the years. Anger feels good for about 10 seconds, and then it costs you. So instead, I took a breath, pulled my phone out, and got to work. I walked the perimeter, slow and steady, taking photos of everything, wide shots, close-ups, license plates, company logos stamped on the sides of the trucks, even the tracks in the dirt where they'd been driving in and out. I took videos too, just sweeping across the whole mess, so there'd be no arguing later about what was there and what wasn't. One of the drivers saw me at some point, gave me that look like he wasn't sure if he should say something, but I didn't give him anything back, no reaction, no confrontation, just kept recording like he didn't exist. That seemed to bother him more than anything. When I had enough, I turned around, walked back up the path, grabbed my coffee, now cold, and went inside. Sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and made 2 calls. First one to the county environmental office, reported illegal dumping, gave them everything I had, photos, location, details. The woman on the other end got real quiet halfway through, started typing fast, asked me to email everything immediately. Second call was to my lawyer, a guy named Frank Delaney, old school, doesn't waste words, and when I told him what I'd found, he just let out this low whistle and said, "Don't touch anything else, let them hang themselves." So I did exactly that. Monday morning came around quicker than usual, and by the time I stepped back out onto that same dirt path, I wasn't alone anymore. 2 county inspectors were already there, clipboards in hand, walking around like surgeons assessing damage, serious faces, not a hint of casual in them. One of them nodded at me, asked if I was the owner, and when I said yes, he just said, "You did the right thing calling this in." They didn't waste time. They shut the dumping down on the spot, started documenting everything themselves, tagging items, marking areas, taking samples. And standing there, watching them work, I could feel it shift. Whatever these developers thought they were getting away with, that window had just slammed shut. I figured that would get their attention. I just didn't realize how fast they'd come knocking. By that same afternoon, I heard a vehicle pulling up near the gate, tires crunching slower this time, cautious. I walked up from the back and saw him standing there. Clean boots, pressed shirt, hard hat tucked under one arm, clipboard in the other, wearing a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And before he even said a word, I already knew. This was the man who thought he could clean this up with a conversation. He stuck his hand out like we were about to discuss lawn care instead of a pile of garbage sitting on my property, introduced himself as Daniel Mercer, project manager for Redwood Ridge Development, voice smooth, practiced, the kind of tone you hear from someone who's talked their way out of problems before and probably expected to do it again. I didn't shake his hand right away, just looked at him for a second, let the silence stretch a little longer than he was comfortable with, then gave him a quick nod instead. He smiled anyway, like it didn't bother him, and said, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I glanced past him toward the back of my land, where the inspectors were still working, then back at him and said, "Misunderstandings don't usually come with broken toilets." That smile flickered, just for a second. He cleared his throat, adjusted the clipboard like it gave him something to hold on to, and said they believed the land wasn't used, that one of the subcontractors may have made an assumption, that it wasn't company policy, that they take environmental responsibility very seriously. All the usual lines, stacked neatly one after the other like he'd rehearsed them on the drive over. I let him finish, didn't interrupt, just watched him talk himself into a corner. Then I said, "And used doesn't mean unowned." That landed heavier. He shifted his weight, looked down briefly, then back up, recalibrating. You could almost see it happening. "Of course," he said, softer now, "and we're prepared to make this right. We'll have everything removed immediately, properly disposed of, no cost to you." I nodded slowly. That's a start. Relief flashed across his face too early. Then I added, "Not enough." That's when the tone changed. Still polite, but tighter. He asked what I had in mind, and I told him straight. "You're already being investigated by the county. That doesn't go away just because you clean up after you get caught." For the first time, he didn't have an immediate response. And right there, standing at that gate, I realized something important. He didn't come here because he respected me. He came because he needed something. I just didn't know what yet. He tried again, this time offering compensation, said they'd be willing to discuss damages, inconvenience, whatever I felt was fair. But the way he said it, it was still framed like a favor, like he was extending goodwill instead of trying to contain a problem. So I leaned a little closer to the fence and said, "Let me ask you something, Daniel. How long have your trucks been using that back road?" That caught him off guard. He blinked once, then twice, like his brain needed a second to catch up. "I'm not sure what you're referring to." I pointed past him, toward the gravel path that cut along the edge of my property, the one I used occasionally but hadn't paid much attention to lately. "That road your equipment's been coming through, that's my land too." Now the silence was his. He turned his head slightly, just enough to glance in that direction, and in that moment, I saw it. That tiny crack where confidence slips and reality starts pushing through. He hadn't expected that. See, here's what they didn't know. Or maybe they did and just hoped I wouldn't notice. That strip of land, about 30 feet wide, ran right along the edge of my property and connected directly to their construction site. It wasn't the main road, not officially, but it was the easiest access for heavy equipment. Shorter route, less traffic, less attention. They'd been using it for months, trucks, loaders, deliveries, all cutting through like it was theirs. No contract, no easement, no permission, just assumption. An assumption works until it doesn't. One of the county inspectors had already picked up on it earlier that morning, asked a couple quiet questions about access routes, wrote something down on his clipboard, and gave me a look that said he understood exactly what was going on. Daniel must have realized that too, because when I mentioned it, his whole posture changed. "I'll need to look into that," he said carefully. I gave a small shrug. "You do that?" He tried to keep the conversation going, steer it back to cleanup and compensation, but it didn't have the same weight anymore. The balance had shifted, and he knew it. After a few more back and forths that didn't really go anywhere, he said they'd be in touch and headed back to his truck, walking a little faster than he had when he arrived. I watched him leave, dust trailing behind his tires, and for the first time since Sunday, I smiled. That evening, I called Frank again, told him everything. There was a pause on the line, then a low chuckle. Well, he said, sounds like they've been trespassing on top of dumping. That's not a great combination for them. What do we do? I asked. We don't rush, he said. We make it official. So the next morning, before the sun was fully up, I had a surveyor out there. Guy named Ellis, older, quiet, knew his work inside and out. He walked the property with me, checked old records, measured everything twice, and by mid-afternoon, bright orange stakes started popping up all along the boundary lines like warning flags. There's something about seeing your land marked out like that. It changes how people look at it. What used to feel open suddenly feels defined, claimed. By sunset, there was no question left about where my property began and ended. And I wasn't done. Wednesday morning, a delivery truck rolled up carrying steel posts, concrete mix, heavy gauge chain, the kind you don't just step over or cut through without making a scene. I spent that day out there, working alongside a couple hired hands, setting posts deep into the ground, anchoring everything solid. It wasn't rushed, it was deliberate. Every strike of the hammer, every pour of concrete, it all had weight to it. We stretched that chain right across the access road, their access road, and bolted a sign dead center where no one could miss it. Private property. No trespassing. Simple. Clear. Final. By the time we finished, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the dirt, and I just stood there for a minute, looking at it. Not angry, not even satisfied in the way you might expect, just steady, like something had been set back into place. The next morning, I didn't even need to go out back to know what was happening. I heard it. Or rather, I didn't. No engines, no machinery, no distant rumble of construction echoing across the land. Just quiet. By mid-morning, my phone started ringing. First call came in around 10. Number I didn't recognize, but I had a feeling. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Mr. Carter, a voice said, sharper than Daniel's, less polished, more direct. This is Victor Hale with Redwood Ridge Development. Here we go. He didn't waste time. Said I couldn't block their access, that I was interfering with an active construction project, that there were schedules, contracts, obligations, all the things that mattered to them now that their shortcut was gone. I leaned back in my chair, looked out the window toward the tree line, and said, You mean the access road on my land? A pause. Then, we've been using that route for months. Without permission, I said. Another pause, longer this time. He shifted tactics, said the delay was costing them significant money, that crews were standing idle, that deliveries were being rerouted, that this could escalate legally if we didn't find a solution. I let him talk, let him lay out every pressure point he thought might work. Then I said, calm as ever, so is illegal dumping. Silence. You could almost hear him grinding his teeth on the other end. He pivoted again, back to cleanup, said they'd remove everything immediately, hire certified disposal, restore the land, same offer, just dressed up with more urgency. It's already reported, I said. County's handling that, and we're willing to compensate you. You already owe the county, I cut in. We're past that. That's when his tone dropped, less force, more calculation. What is it you want? I looked out at the empty stretch of land behind my house, thought about that pile of trash, the smell, the assumption that they could just take what wasn't theirs, and I said, right now? Nothing. That wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't his turn to know yet. He didn't like that answer. You could hear it in the way he exhaled, short and controlled. We'll have our legal team reach out. I figured you might, I said. And just like that, the line went dead. By Thursday, the calls did come, different voices this time, slower, more careful, words chosen like they had weight. Lawyers. They didn't threaten, not directly. They asked questions. About access. About intent. About what it would take to resolve the situation. I had one question for them in return. Has the environmental violation been resolved yet? Silence. That told me everything I needed to know. By Friday morning, they were ready to stop asking. And finally, they started offering. By Friday morning, the tone had changed completely. No more edge. No more quiet threats wrapped in polite language. Just straight-up urgency dressed in professionalism. The call came in a little after 9, same number that had been trying me the day before, and this time when I answered, the voice on the other end didn't waste a second pretending they were in control anymore. "Mr. Carter," he said, measured but tight, "we'd like to present a formal resolution." I stepped out onto the porch while he talked, coffee in hand again. Same spot where all this started, except now the air was clean. No smell, no hint of what had been sitting out there just days before. Funny how fast things can change when the right pressure gets applied. "Go ahead," I said. He laid it out piece by piece, like he was reading from a document he didn't fully agree with but knew he had to deliver anyway. Full cleanup of the site, not just surface level, but complete removal of all debris, certified disposal, environmental compliance. Soil testing across the affected area. If contamination was found, they'd remove the top layer entirely, replace it with fresh soil, regrade the land, reseed it, bring it back to better than it was before. I didn't say anything, just let him keep going. Then came the number. Additionally, we're prepared to offer $25,000 in compensation for damages and inconvenience. There it was. For a second, I just watched the sunlight hit the edge of the field, thinking about how, a few days ago, they probably would have laughed at the idea of paying me anything, and now they were putting a number on the table like it was the only way out. I took a sip of coffee, let it sit for a moment, then said, "Almost." He paused. "I'm sorry. Almost," I repeated. "You're close." Silence again, but not the same kind as before. This one had weight, anticipation, like they knew something else was coming but weren't sure how bad it would be. "You need access," I said finally. "That's the part you're not saying out loud." He exhaled slowly. "Yes, we do." And there it was. The real problem. Not the trash, not the fine, not the optics, the road. Without that strip of land cutting through my property, their entire operation was tangled up in delays. Longer routes, permits, rerouting heavy equipment through areas not designed for it. Time bleeding out of their schedule one day at a time. And in construction, time isn't just money, it's everything. So I leaned back against the porch railing and said, "Then here's how this works." I could almost picture him straightening up on the other end, pen ready, whatever legal pad he had in front of him suddenly very important. "We sign a permanent easement," I said. "Recorded. Legal. No gray area." He didn't interrupt. Good sign. "You get access to that road," I continued, "but it's on my terms. $3,500 a month for as long as you use it. Paid on time, every time." A longer pause now, not resistance, just calculation. "And that's not all," I added. Of course it wasn't. "Full liability insurance," I said. "You name me on the policy. Anything happens on that road, it's covered. No exceptions." I could hear quiet murmuring in the background. Probably other people in the room now. Lawyers. Maybe that project manager too. All of them suddenly very interested in what I had to say. Then I gave them the last piece. "One violation," I said, slow and clear. "Any future dumping, any misuse of my land, anything outside what we agree to, and the easement is gone. Immediately. No warnings. No second chances." That part, that's what made it real. Because money they understood. Contracts they understood. But risk, open-ended, uncontrollable risk, that's what makes people careful. The line stayed quiet for a few seconds after that. I didn't fill it. I've learned that if you give people space at the right moment, they'll talk themselves into your terms better than you ever could. "Finally," he said, "we'd need that condition clearly defined." "It will be," I said. Another pause, then, "We'll need a few hours to review." "Take your time," I replied. "Clock's already running." That one landed. We hung up, and I just stood there for a while, looking out over the land again. Same trees, same dirt, same stretch of sky, but it felt different now. Not because of the money or the deal, but because something had shifted. They came in thinking no one was watching, and now they knew better. By late afternoon, Frank called me back. "They're agreeing," he said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "All of it." I let out a slow breath. "Even the termination clause." "Especially that," he said. "They don't have a choice." We spent the next couple hours going over the details, tightening language, making sure there were no loopholes, no vague wording they could twist later. Frank was thorough, borderline paranoid, but that's exactly what you want in moments like this. By early evening, the paperwork was ready. We met the following morning, Saturday, back at the same gate where Daniel had stood a few days earlier trying to call it a misunderstanding. Only this time, there were more people, lawyers, representatives, even Daniel himself, though he stayed a little quieter now, standing off to the side, watching more than speaking. A folding table had been set up near the entrance, documents laid out neatly. Pins placed like this was some kind of ceremony, and in a way, it was. I walked up, nodded to Frank, glanced once at the stack of papers, then at the men across from me. Different expressions now, less confidence, more respect, or maybe just caution. Either way, it was earned. We went through everything line by line, no rushing, no assumptions. The easement terms, the monthly payment, the cleanup obligations, the insurance coverage, and that final clause, the one that gave me the power to shut it all down again if they ever stepped out of line. When it was time, I signed. They followed. Just like that, it was done. Over the next couple weeks, they kept their word. Crews came in, not the same ones as before. These were specialized, careful, methodical. They removed every piece of trash, dug out sections of soil that tested bad, brought in fresh layers, leveled everything out, planted new grass that hadn't even started to grow yet, but already made the place feel different. Cleaner, like it should have been from the start. And every month after that, right on schedule, $3,500, like clockwork. Now here's the part one keep thinking about, and maybe you will too. They didn't stop because it was wrong. They stopped because it cost them more not to. And I handled it the way I did, not because I'm some kind of hero, but because I had the time, the knowledge, and honestly, the patience to let it play out. A lot of people wouldn't. A lot of people would have yelled, fought, maybe taken a quick payout and moved on, and I get that. Not everyone wants a drawn-out battle over something like this. But here's the question that sticks with me. If I hadn't said anything, if I hadn't walked down that path that morning, how long would they have kept doing it? And not just to me. So I'm curious what you think. Did I go too far shutting down their access like that? Or was it the only way to make them take responsibility? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read more of them than you'd think. And if you've ever dealt with something like this, I'd really like to hear how you handled it. And if you want more stories like this, real situations, real consequences, go ahead and hit subscribe. Stick around. There's always more coming.